crooked glasses. Hi, Charlie. Hi, Theo. How are you guys? It was good to say hi to you yesterday. I have another story for you. It is, spot my shirt. It's called How Fletcher Was Hatched. This is another old story that Grandpa Pop used to have when he was a kid. And then we read it to your dad and Uncle Andy. And now I'm reading it to you. How cool is that? Now look at this picture first. This is Fletcher, who's a really cute dog. And he's inside an egg, a really big egg shell. Now, do dogs come from eggshells? Or do chickens come from the eggs? Yeah, I've never heard of a dog being hatched from an egg before. So let's see what happens in this. It sounds like it's going to be a silly story. So let's see. I've only read this. I read this a long time ago. So it'll be nice to read it again and have fun with it again. This is a really pretty picture of two, looks like two otters or two beavers maybe. Look at the two beavers and Fletcher dancing. How Fletcher was hatched. Let's see what happens. Amanda sat in the sunlight watching a chick hatch from an egg. Peep! And it was out of its shell. Fletcher, she called to her dog, look at this dear chick. It's so tiny. It's so yellow. It's so fluffy. It's so stupid, said Fletcher. To himself. He gave Alexandra a hopeless look, and he walked to his water dish. It was empty. Another thing, he hadn't had his ears scratched in days. No one wants a first-rate hound dog around here, he thought to himself. She's forgotten all about me. Fletcher raised his head low and howled miserably. So Fletcher's kind of sad because I don't think he's getting attention. He must be taking care of the chickies. Let's see what happens. Quiet, Noisy. The chicks are sleeping, said Alexandra, and she turned her back on Fletcher. Aw. With a wounded look, Fletcher shuffled away toward the park at the edge of town. At the far end of the park was a pond where Fletcher's faithful friends Beaver and Otter lived. Otter was splashing Beaver at the water's edge when Fletcher shuffled up. The animals weren't long in noticing Fletcher's sadness. Fletcher saw to that with a few deep moans and some very loud sniffles. Oh, alarmed, they gathered close and near to his tail. She's forgotten me, said Fletcher. She loves chickens. Cute, fluffy, peeping, stupid chickens. Beaver and Otter were wild, free animals and didn't really understand Fletcher's deep attachment to his mistress, but understood that Fletcher was terribly unhappy. I'm terribly unhappy, said Fletcher. Maybe if you were fluffy and yellow, said Otter. Could you peep a little bit, said Beaver. If you could only hatch once in a while, said Otter. That's it, said Beaver, slapping his tail. We'll have you hatch. It'll be a new beginning. Me? Hatch? said Fletcher. I wonder what they're thinking. But Beaver and Otter paid little attention to Fletcher. They were soon in a warm discussion of how to make an egg large enough to hold a hound dog. With some misgivings, Fletcher promised to do his part and act like a chicken. This is going to be silly. Oh my gosh, look, they're building a big egg. They built the egg around Fletcher. All day they worked in the sun with reeds, clay, and river grasses. Otter sometimes stopped to tickle Fletcher's nose with a cornflower, but Beaver, who was a master builder, worked steadily, plastering pink clay evenly over the reed network. With his friends working so tirelessly, Fletcher couldn't complain, even when wet humps of clay dropped on his head. So they're building him a big egg, a pretend eggshell, so they can hatch out of it and surprise his owner. Just turn the page. There we go. At last it was finished. Beaver had smothered the clay over the surface with such artistry there could be little doubt that this great pink pearly object was an egg, a huge egg that would have been a joy to any mother bird's heart. He speckled it brown in honor of Fletcher's own brown spots. 2 small holes were left in the egg so Fletcher could be fed water and a strawberry or 2. So they have this big egg. Look how big that is. Wow. Now, how are they going to get it over to Alexandra, I wonder? Beaver and Otter and Fletcher were tired. It had been a long day's work. Shadows grew deeper and lengthened into the blue of the night, and when the pumpkin-colored moon appeared on the rim of the pond, Beaver and Otter nestled close to their gray egg, and they fell asleep. Inside the egg, feeling very homesick, Fletcher wondered if Alexandra was thinking about him. Back in the farmhouse, Alexandra lay awake under her red quilt. Tears fell on her pillow. How could she sleep with Fletcher gone, perhaps never to return? The clock struck 12 before she finally went to sleep. So she's missing Fletcher. She doesn't know where he is. Oh, she's very worried. At last it was morning. At the pond, the white surface of the water was broken by jumping frogs and leaping minnows. Otter and Beaver awoke and ambled down to the water's edge for a quick dip and some breakfast. They didn't forget a few strawberries for Fletcher, who was discovering that the inside of the egg is a most unsatisfactory place to yawn and stretch. "Let's go," said Beaver. Now the animals started the last part of their plan. Very carefully, they pushed, shoved, and rolled the egg until they reached a large clump of grass by the path that led to Alexandra's school. Inside the egg, Fletcher felt a bit bruised and very confused. He'd been rolling a long way over the hills and everything. The town began to wake up slowly, and the sounds of traffic drove Beaver and Otter back to the pond and the tall grasses. They shouted goodbye. "Goodbye, Fletcher. Good luck. And remember, no barking, just peeping." "Peep," said Fletcher, and he laid quiet. It was the custodian on the way to open the school who first discovered the amazing egg. Look how big that egg is. He shouted to some nearby children, "It's an egg, the biggest one in the world. Call the science teacher." Soon a crowd of children gathered about. Their eyes were filled with wonder. "Where is its mother?" said little Tommy. "Its mother would be as large as a house," said round-eyed Gabby, shaking her blonde hair. "Bigger," said Robert. They're wondering what kind of animal could have laid this egg. The science teacher scurried up to the crowd with his friend Professor Schnitzer from the university. The crowd became larger, and members of the school band, on their way for an early practice, gathered nearby. The science teacher stood up on a park bench, and he shouted, "Don't touch it! It looks like a flat-billed prehistoric scratch-a-fatch. A priceless find." A respectful hush fell on the crowd. He thinks it's a scratch-a-fatch. We'll see. "Or perhaps it's the web-footed, pickle-faced dinoflyer," cried the professor from the university. Fletcher huddled inside the egg, quivering with excitement as he waited for Alexandra. Suddenly he heard her name. The children were telling her all about the egg. Fletcher now began to get ready for the big moment, but Alexandra was making funny noises. Alexandra was crying. She told them that she didn't want to see a stupid old egg. She was looking for her lost Fletcher. In fact, the only thing in the world that she wanted was Fletcher. Oh, she's really sad. She's lost her Fletcher. And here he is inside the egg, huh? Let's see what happens. Look! He busted out of the egg. Then and there, Fletcher knew it was time to hatch. He pushed and stretched. With a rising howl, he fairly exploded the egg. He jumped right out of the egg. I'm so excited to see Alexandra. Oh, look, he's out of the egg. I want to see her. The crowd screamed and moved back. Fletcher shook himself off, and the mud flew. Feeling that something was expected of him, he turned to Alexandra and he said, "Peep." Are dogs supposed to peep, or do they bark? Right, they bark. They go woof, woof, not beep, beep. What a silly Fletcher. Alexandra skipped along with Fletcher. Fletcher panted happily. Sometimes Alexandra had to stop to hug her dog. She was so happy. And Fletcher thought to himself, you don't have to hatch to be loved. You don't have to be yellow and peep. You can be a great hound dog with brown spots and be the most important creature in a little girl's life. He gave himself a good shake, and the last of the dried mud on his back went flying. In the end. Aw, it was a silly story, huh? So Fletcher didn't have to be a chick or hatch out of an egg for his owner, Alexandra, to love him, huh? He just had to be him. Well, I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed that story. I did. It was fun. All right. I love you and have a great day.